Welcome to the Chaos Sector. We return to the Matrix. In the previous episode, we questioned the claims that the shooter was a 20-year-old from Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. It is our conclusion that there isn't a Thomas Matthews Crooks from Bethel Park, and for that matter, that 20-year-old Thomas Matthews Crooks is not listed in Pennsylvania at all. We checked other websites and came across one called True People Search. It has an age filter, yet no information for a Thomas Matthews Crooks. Age range from 18 to 30 was found in Bethel Park. The results had only 15 records for individuals named Thomas Crooks, which none of them resided in Bethel Park specifically, nor had previously resided there. But get this, you know who was listed? 69-year-old Thomas Crooks from Pittsburgh, and other Thomas Crooks from Pennsylvania. Based on the research, we can suggest that there isn't anyone named specifically Thomas Matthews Crooks in Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. And it doesn't matter if he is deceased, because they list deceased individuals as well on these search websites. And you want to know who else was listed? Matthew Brian Crooks from Bethel Park, who is alleged to be the shooter's father. Oh, really? The father is listed in People Search. Kind of says a lot about the claims the websites are not accurate, huh? If the father of the alleged shooter is listed, where is the son? He was 20 years old at the time of his alleged death, so all of his information should be listed in the database as well, since he's an adult. Yet the oddity I noticed is the results found only one person named Matthew B. Crooks, who is 50 years old, but they don't reside in Bethel Park. But below that search result, we see Matthew Brian Crooks, who is 53 years old, who resides in Bethel Park. But this is not from the search result of True People Search. Instead, it's from a paid sponsor, truthfinder.com. What this indicates is that information is confidential. Of course, the more intrusive information is not public, as you have to pay for that. But the basic search result, which is listed right in your face, is provided by a paid sponsor. Yet all the other Thomas Crooks, Thomas Matthew Crooks, whatever variation you can think of, is listed in the basic search results of the True People Search website. Really? What makes Matthew Brian Crooks so distinct from all the other individuals listed? So we have the alleged 20-year-old Thomas Matthews Crooks not listed in any of the search results from Bethel Park, and we have the father of this person listed in Bethel Park, but it's by a paid sponsor, which means it's a different type of search result from everyone else. Why the distinction? Who is this person? Here's my take. The person depicted as the shooter is not the shooter. None of what was reported was true. All of the former classmates, neighbors claiming he was bullied, he was a loner, all of this was typical foreshadowing, all to generate the mass shooter narrative. The individual may in fact exist, but the backstory is all fabricated in my opinion, including the name. Did the federal government notify all of the People Search companies to hide Matthew Brian Crooks' information from being publicly displayed after the shooting? Did they do the same for the 20-year-old Thomas Matthews Crooks? It would appear so, right? Don't worry, we're not going to pay some website to get information on that person. And those who do that are tracked by the federal government. Why? Because they want to know why you're prying into people's personal business. Of course, that's the pot calling the kettle black, because the FBI and other federal government agencies do the exact same thing to citizens. Yet, if it's related to an attempted assassination, they definitely want to know why you're prying into individuals connected to that incident. The shooter was someone else. It wasn't the 20-year-old. No history of violence, no political protest, political discourse in school, no political activism. Nothing that indicated he had any vitriol towards Trump or any other politician. You don't just wake up and decide you're going to assassinate Donald Trump at a rally. Mental illness, depression, being bullied, none of this can justify that decision unless it is associated with a political ideology and vitriol. Now, this sounds like a false flag operation, right? Yes, indeed. See, the false flag is designed to appear as though perpetrated by someone other than the person or group responsible for it. Thomas Matthews Crooks was used as the perpetrator, but the actual conspirators were all dressed in black suits, shades on, with earpieces in their ears. Yes, this was an inside job by the federal government agencies. Oh, that dreaded FBI. Even the CIA is involved as well. With Democrats hiding in the bushes, they know that the majority of American citizens, and especially Trump supporters, know that this was an inside job. The narrative that it was some lone wolf, depressed, bullied 20-year-old with access to an AR-15 with no political motives for his attempt to assassinate a politician is simply damage control. Everyone knows the truth, and that truth is being carefully protected. It's a double-edged sword that they're trying to avoid. Either it was a 20-year-old with a political motive to assassinate Donald Trump, or he was the scapegoat for the conspirators with the same political motive who wanted to assassinate Donald Trump. You can't avoid this either-or scenario, which segues me to the director. The Secret Service director resigned due to being blasted by Congress members about the lack of transparency, the lack of information, unwilling to provide names of agents, unwilling to provide anything beneficial in regards to the investigation. And before she could be fired, she resigned. Oh, the slick piece of shit. If someone resigns, it essentially shows that the decision was yours and not your employer. Although this is in relation to an assassination attempt, Cheadle could potentially be rehired by the Secret Service in some other capacity, with a bit of convincing. If she had been fired, though, which she should have been, it's magnified that her termination was due to that security breach. You see how this goes? And let me mention how Democrat Congress members dealt with that hearing, because it was pathetic. Most of them filibustered in their time allotted to question Cheadle, and by the time they did question her about the Secret Service's operations that day, their time was up. They spent most of their time talking about mass shootings, AR-15s. Heck, some of them even rewinded all the way back to January 6th. None of that is relevant to questioning the Secret Service director about the lack of security for the former president, which led to the assassination attempt. I want you to listen to Rashida Tlaib, who literally filibustered in her time of questioning Cheadle.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director, for being here. You know, when we hear the headline, a 20-year-old young man with access to an assault weapon commits an act of mass violence, I mean, we've heard this before, over and over again. But the unfortunate thing is that my residents don't get a committee hearing. We have not had one committee hearing about the over 260 mass shootings that we've had.
Okay, at this point, Tlaib is filibustering, not questioning the Director of Secret Service. This defeats the purpose of her even being called upon, because her intentions were to use that moment to filibuster about other issues. Now those other issues are relevant, but that's not the time to address those issues. And she claims there haven't been committee hearings in her district about mass shootings and gun violence. Isn't it your district? Have you proposed a hearing representing your district to address those issues in the past? Of course she hasn't, only bringing it up to filibuster in this hearing. And she used that relevance as a way to ramble on, deflecting from presenting questions to Cheadle. Let's keep going.
Killing hundreds of people, injuring hundreds, changing their lives forever. And don't get me wrong, to many of my colleagues, I mean, I watched, and even the pool of blood, the screams, it was horrific. But it made me think about the images I saw after mass shootings at schools, grocery stores. I mean, I think of Buffalo, New York at a supermarket, where a racist gunman killed 10 shoppers with an AR.
Her intentions were to drag this out in attempts to pull the attention away from the fact that the shooter had a political motive to assassinate the very person she hates. So of course she doesn't want to directly address it, and it benefits Cheadle more than anyone. Ugh, disgusting.
In El Paso, AK-47 style assault rifle killed 22. In Florida, in Parkland, Florida, 17 students and teachers murdered, again with an AR. In Pittsburgh, at a place of faith, Tree of Life Synagogue, 11 murdered. And don't get me about Newton, Connecticut, which still breaks my heart, 26 murdered, including 20 elementary school children. This year in Michigan, we've had, Mr. Chair, 2 mass shootings. 21 shot in Detroit. One of the most horrific shootings we've seen. 2 killed at a splash pad in Rochester Hills, Michigan. 8 shot there. Again, an assault weapon used. But the difference here is the former president gets a hearing in his attempt to assassinate, but our residents don't get a hearing about
What the hell did she just mumble out? It sounded like she meant to say, or was afraid to say, in the attempted assassination.
The former president gets a hearing in his attempted assassination, but
The former president gets a hearing about his attempted assassination. You forgot how to speak English? Or is it because you're so angry that he didn't get assassinated, you can't even hold it back, which causes you to stutter and jumble words all over the place?
In his attempted assassination.
Yeah, that sounds about right. She hates that man so much that she can't even utter the words attempted assassination of Trump. That is a heart full of hatred, my friends, where you can't even utter the words attempted assassination. And then she's dismissing that attempted assassination by using mass shootings. Oh my fucking, it's unbelievable. She's using mass shootings as a way to deflect from questioning the director of the Secret Service and her role, accountability, and failure in the assassination attempt of a former president. This was the plan, though, filibustering to degrade the importance of that attempted assassination. I mean, this person is mentally disturbed, yet she's a Congress member, some of the most corrupt and yet dangerous individuals based on their power.
mass shootings, about gun violence in our country. You know, Mr. Chair, I ask this wholeheartedly. You know, they don't have Secret Service to protect them. They don't. I don't have these mass agencies protecting our kids in the schools or the supermarket, movie theaters, or going to a block party in Detroit. I don't have that. We don't have that.
Wow, this is absolute madness. Let me dissect her bullshit. First of all, an assassination attempt on a president or former president has national security consequences and even global consequences. It can provoke a civil war, as many citizens who supported that president or former president would be enraged that it happened. And also, the element of it being connected to the Secret Service, whose job is to protect that individual, also increases the anger in those citizens. Okay, she's clearly dismissing the national and global impact an assassination can have and would have. But then again, if it were old Joe who was almost assassinated, not only would she include the mass shooting rhetoric, but she would be focused more on questioning the director who was overseeing detail for old Joe's rally. Second, the point about the victims of mass shootings, well, it's a separate issue. Those lives also matter and should be protected. But that falls on the federal government and how they handle individuals who are accessing those firearms. Although this alleged 20-year-old shooter had an AR-15, the focus in this specific hearing is why was this individual even allowed to potentially assassinate Donald Trump? And she never focused on that, which proves that Tlaib, along with other radical Democrats, don't care that Trump was almost assassinated. If she did, she wouldn't have spent most of her time filibustering, deflecting from the issue at hand, which was questioning the director of the Secret Service.
But I can't believe we're just going to focus on that and not the fact that we're hearing yet again in the headlines a 20-year-old young man having access to an assault weapon, a weapon of war many of my veterans say they have to be trained to use. But he can get it, wasn't safely stored by the parent, grabbing that gun, and innocent lives were lost. Director, I know you got asked about this, and I think it's important, though, you know, for us to hear this. But how difficult is your job when there's such easy access to assault weapons in the streets?
I think the job of a Secret Service agent and officer is incredibly difficult.
You know, if you're someone who has all of your screws and they're tightened, you know, listening to this person would cause you to go crazy. Seriously, because this is madness. Tlaib's first question to the director is how hard is her job when individuals have easy access to weapons in the streets? That is a clever extension of her filibustering because it is not asking Cheadle about the actual setting at Trump's rally. She is expecting Cheadle to answer based on mass shootings and easy access to weapons in the fucking streets. Although that has relevance, no, I take that back. Scratch that. It doesn't have relevance because it's used to distract and deflect from Cheadle's accountability. And another slick tactic with that question is painting the scenario where a young loner was too much for the Secret Service to handle. Oh yeah, because you know, it's hard for the Secret Service to do their jobs because some loner has easy access to an AR-15. Didn't seem like their job was hard that day. He was spotted before any shots were fired, and of course Cheadle had some breathing room courtesy of those co-conspiring Democratic Congress members. This is pissing me off.
I think the environment we deal with every day and the dynamics of the threat environment is incredibly difficult. These are brave men and women who put their lives on the line, and a day like we had on July 13th is a day that no one in my agency ever wants to have as their responsibility. It is an incredibly difficult job.
Yeah, I immediately thought of the children in the audience. I mean, when you think about going to a rally with your family, again, their lives are forever changed. The incident are never isolated. I really believe these incidents are never isolated. And I know Detroit Free Press had reported that the 20-year-old Pennsylvania shooter looked up the 2021 Oxford High School shooting in Michigan. Can you comment on what information this shooter was looking up in regard to the tragedy of Oxford High School, where it took 4 of our high school youth there?
I'm sorry, I'm not able to. The FBI has those details.
So you can't even tell us, I mean, was he looking at the type of weapon? How many?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have those details.
Do you have, I mean, did they?
This woman is a maniac. Just move on, you fucking piece of shit. And you're asking the wrong person about that issue anyway, you see? The FBI has that data, not the fucking director for the Secret Service. And she knows that, but is purposely dragging her feet, wasting everyone's time in the hearing who want to genuinely get answers. The chairman should have stopped her at this point. Actually, earlier, to be honest. This is a form of obstruction of justice. Intentionally delaying the inquiry proceedings in this hearing by filibustering is preventing Congress from getting any answers or information regarding the shooting. Of course, she's not the only one in the hearing asking questions, but what if she was the chairwoman? She would be gabbling down on everyone asking the tough questions. But hey, it shows that Democrats have something to hide, just like Kimberly Cheadle.
Share that with you, though?
I don't have the full content of what his searches were. I think that they are still in the process of examining all of his devices.
Okay. Again, the impact, I want to be really serious about this. The impact on our families is more than just this political rally, Mr. Chair. We have to talk about this, even if we're in disagreement. Let's talk about it, because I've seen statistics that show that we could be saving lives now if we ban these weapons of war from being able to buy it at the local store down the street. I mean, we just can't continue to allow this to happen. And unfortunately, my residents are not former presidents of the United States. They don't get a hearing. They don't get Secret Service, any of that. And even among those that are expressing the failed in the system, they just deserve better. They truly do. Thank you, and I yield.
Now, none of that was relevant to the issue at hand. And to mention how citizens don't have the same privilege as a president in regards to protection. This is dismissive. Rashida Tlaib used mass shootings as a way to pull attention away from the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. That is disgusting. And we're not going to give her any merit in addressing mass shootings because it was used to distract from the issue at hand. And due to this, she's using those mass shootings as a shield, covering Cheadle's body from severe damage. Think about that. Tlaib is filibustering about mass shootings to avoid questioning Cheadle about the attempted assassination, which allows Cheadle to slither away, even for that moment. So she doesn't care about the mass shootings. She doesn't care about the children, the adults, anyone who are victims of those mass shootings. All she wanted to do was attack the opposition and use the hearing as her soapbox to do so. That makes it all an act. She should have been gabbled down so hard, everyone's heads would spin. Very disgusting. And see, this is why the theory that it was a hit ordered by Democrats is starting to rear its head. This was filibustering, and nobody had the courage to gabble down on her. Just because the perpetrator used an AR-15 does not give you the opening to filibuster about guns in America, mass shootings, and the lack of privilege normal citizens have compared to a former president. You are there to question the director about her role, her oversight, her decisions, her team of Secret Service members, and what preventive measures should have been taken and what went wrong in carrying out those preventive measures. And of course, Cheadle was allowed to avoid any scrutiny in these scenarios because those Democrat Congress members were too busy trying to attack Donald Trump in an indirect way. They were literally asking softball questions, which basically subdued the importance of the hearing's focus. Most of the Democrats tried to disguise their collective damage control in the hearing by reiterating what their Republican counterparts were grilling her about. They simply tried to mimic the concern Republicans had, but they spent most of their time of questioning, filibustering within their time. Republicans asked her clear and cut, direct yes or no questions, and she evaded answering them. She didn't provide any information and claimed that there is an ongoing investigation, and she will be able to provide information once the investigation is complete. Translation: I will stonewall in this hearing because it wasn't a case of incompetence, failure to secure the perimeters. None of that. It was a conspiracy to allow the perimeter to be vulnerable so the assassination could potentially be accomplished. And this is why she wouldn't provide any details about her staff's actions, because the trail of so-called incompetence of security failures would lead to this conclusion. That hearing was done 9 days since the shooting, and the FBI apparently discovered all of that crap about the shooter within 24 hours. And it was all released to mainstream media. Yet the director hadn't discovered what went wrong that day? Oh, you need to figure out more details about why the shooter was allowed to climb up a ladder, be spotted by citizens, authorities notified, and yet the Secret Service didn't do anything about it? In that hearing, Congress members inquired about the oddity that Cheadle had apparently shared more information or was more transparent in mainstream media interviews than in a hearing before Congress. That is very disturbing because it indicates that Cheadle was more transparent with the media due to the assumption that the biases of mainstream media will cater towards her. And also, there are no real ramifications being interviewed by someone in media, such as being questioned by members of Congress in a hearing. She feared the backlash, but she mainly feared the truth coming out in that hearing. In other words, sure, she was concerned about her accountability, but more so about the trail of evidence showing that it was set up to be unsecured. That's where the major fear comes from. People need to understand, when you fail to answer questions in a hearing or provide substantial information requested by the congressional body, this can be considered a crime. Because if you are not willing to answer questions or answer them directly, this is basically seen as lying. And if you're lying in a hearing, this is a crime because you are under oath, swearing to tell the truth. Not answering questions or not providing details or information regarding the shooting when you're the director of the Secret Service is clearly a sign that Cheadle is hiding the truth about what unfolded that day. Stonewalling in a hearing is a crime. Many nominees have done it. They're asked a question and they simply avoid answering the questions. Yet, before they sit down in that chair before a committee, they raise their right hand and swear to tell the truth. But when they sit down and are questioned, they avoid answering the questions, which is breaking the oath of telling the truth before a congressional body. For example, a Congress member asks a nominee, "Did you post a tweet about political threats against Donald Trump?" The nominee states, quote, "In all due respect, Congress member, I assure you that if I am selected for this position, I will uphold the law to the best of my abilities," unquote. The Congress member responds in saying, quote, "I understand that, but I'm asking you about this tweet from your account on such and such date at such and such time. Do you condone this violence against former President Donald Trump?" And the nominee continues to repeat the same thing over and over. This is a crime because they are failing to answer the question, violating the oath that they took before the hearing. Cheadle did the exact same thing. She knows the truth. She knows all of the details of the events that day and failed to provide Congress with the information they were seeking. That is a crime, and she not only should have been fired, but immediately an investigation into every bit and piece of the Secret Service's actions that day. And she even claimed that the shooter appeared suspicious prior to the shooting, but stated, quote, "Just because someone is suspicious doesn't mean that they're automatically a threat," unquote. For her to even say that is an admission of guilt. That admission is allowing that suspicious individual to sit on a roof, aim at the former president, and then shoot him.
Let me chime in a bit here, because many need to truly grasp what crimes Cheadle committed. A director of the Secret Service, whose job is to protect a presidential candidate, one of the most iconic presidential candidates at that, holds a rally, and the Secret Service was notified that a suspicious individual was spotted, and nobody from the team decided to investigate. None of the team members felt the need to investigate. Oh, let's look even deeper into that. The suspicious individual was spotted, is on the roof, has a weapon, and what in the hell are the snipers doing at this moment? Once again, the Secret Service was notified about this suspicious individual prior, that's right, prior to any gunshots fired. So it's not even up for debate. Misinterpretation, none of that. They watched the individual the entire time prior to shots being fired. Now, the local authorities also were to blame, but it's possible that they were told to stand down, meaning they were told not, I repeat, told not to investigate the suspicious individual. And that makes it even more devastating because the Secret Service would override the local authorities, and if they tell them to stand down, they would oblige. And this would mean that the Secret Service was aware of the suspicious individual if citizens spotted him on the roof and notified local authorities. Trained snipers who are surveilling the area definitely spotted him on the roof as well, even if they weren't notified by the authorities. This was a conspiracy to assassinate Donald Trump by the Secret Service. And Kimberly Cheadle was sweating Secret Service bullets in that hearing, knowing the truth is staring her in the face. Her resignation means nothing. I guess that was her way of avoiding any future congressional hearings. Nope, you're not getting out of this one. So, just wanted to dig a bit deeper into it.
But here's the thing, I don't think he was the actual shooter. He was the decoy. He was the stooge. He was the fall guy. We can suggest that he let off a few shots, but I think the actual shooters were attempting to shoot Trump during those shots.
That makes sense. Cover fire, so to speak. The decoy shooter just fires a few shots as a distraction. If you recall, the first few shots didn't hit Trump. It was a few shots after that. And that supports the theory that there was cover fire first as a decoy, then the shot that actually wounded Trump was intended to be a headshot by someone else. But as we witnessed, Trump had turned his head in time to avoid the headshot. Cheadle is in very hot water. Even though she didn't call the shots, figuratively and literally, she is a link in the chain. She has nowhere to hide.
Once it failed, they turned their attention to the alleged shooter. It was the Secret Service themselves who were trying to take Trump out, in essence, doing it in secret, in broad daylight. I think it's safe to say that the majority of American citizens and other citizens from across the world have come to this conclusion as well. Now, there was a video where an individual claimed that one of the Secret Service agents pointed their gun at Trump in the motorcade. I assume they're suggesting that the secret agent tried to assassinate Trump and make it appear he had been shot by the alleged assassin. Wouldn't put it past them. We'd have to examine that portion for clarification. But we all know the Secret Service was conspiring against Trump. It's clear what the motive was. But now we'll look into the lady that has gone viral, who was casually on her phone while Trump was dodging bullets. This is the chaos sector.